Welcome to Saturday's Warrior. I'm Trevor, and this is the channel where we talk all things BYU and Big 12. And with me today, I got my good buddy Ryan joining me, who is a Kansas alum and a big fan. So, Ryan, thanks for joining me.
Yeah, thanks. Go Jayhawks.
All right. So, funny story. We go back 20 years now. I was thinking about it. 20 years. Can you believe it? And I have to say, I have not seen you nearly enough over those 20 years. So glad we're doing this now. But funny enough, back in early, I guess, I don't remember the spring or whenever, I did a video about the Utah Hockey Club potential nicknames. He stumbled upon it, found my channel that way. We kind of reconnected. So I said, well, we got to get together during football season to discuss the game. So here we are. We're going to jump in and break down the matchup this weekend and to get some more insights on Kansas and what we can expect in this matchup. So before we do, I got to say, dude, something I love seeing is on social media, anytime you ever go to a game, which is a lot, it seems like you're always at some game of one way or another. You're always decked out in the gear. Your kids are decked out. You've got the drip. I gotta, applaud the dedication to your teams.
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate it. I have a little bit of an addiction, so I guess it's good to be addicted to this than other things. But yeah, I got a little bit of an addiction.
Well, yeah, I mean that is a better addiction than many things out there. I don't think my wife would allow me to be addicted to that. Little too pricey. So so anyway, you will be at the game this weekend. I imagine you'll be all decked out in your Kansas gear, but which is awesome because I will not be at the game, unfortunately. But let us know a little bit about, I guess, first, before we get too much into it, what is kind of your connection to Kansas, and tell us a little bit about your fandom there.
Yeah, so I grew up in Utah, and most people who grew up in Utah chose BYU or Utah, but I always liked both of them growing up. So I kind of cheered off and on. If one team was doing good, I'd cheer for them. So I like BYU. But when I was trying to decide what grad schools to go to, Kansas had the best program for what I was going into. And so I went there. And as anyone who knows anything about the Big 12 knows, that Kansas is a basketball powerhouse. And so I became an immediate fan. It was the year after. So I got accepted to Kansas in March of 2008. And a couple weeks after I got accepted, they won the national championship in basketball. And I've been an immediate fan of them. That year, they also won the Orange Bowl. They went 12-1 and won the Orange Bowl in football. And so I thought I was going to a school that was a powerhouse in both football and basketball. And boy, was I wrong. Kansas football from 2008 until recently has been really bad. But that's my connection to them. I went there for school in 2008, 2009. And that's where I got my master's degree and just have followed them ever since. I didn't really have, like I said, I kind of cheered for BYU in Utah, but didn't really have like a strong college team that I cheered for. And so just went full in on Kansas and have followed them ever since.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, for grad school, I went to, smaller school where, athletics is a little bit, lower tier. And so it's cool to go and have that connection. And I've never been there. I've heard it's hillier than you'd expect from a school in Kansas. But other than that, I don't know a whole lot outside of, what we've seen in the sports programs. And obviously, as you mentioned, they're very bad at football for quite some time. So it's cool to see them have that success. It's just funny because there's not, I think, another school out there that I feel polar opposites on when it comes from basketball to football. Like when it's basketball, you root against Kansas. And when it's football, you're just like, oh man, they're bad so long. This is cool. Like, way to go, Kansas, to like pull
Yeah.
together. We got like a cool team and some great players on there. So it is weird to have. And then when we switch to basketball, it's like, boo, down with Hunter Dickinson or whatever, like that. That shot to Allen Hall last year to end that game, like that was just huge, and that was epic.
Yeah,
All right.
no, they went their football program went 10 years without a road conference victory.
Oh,
10 years during that stretch. They went one year they went 0-12. COVID year they went 0-9. They had 2 years where they didn't win a single game. It's been bad. So
well, which makes the turnaround all that more impressive. Because when was Leipold hired?
he was hired. This is his 4th year. So his first year, I think we went 3-9. Second year we went 6-7. Went to our first bowl game in 15 years. Then last year was a really good year, 8-5 breakout year. A decent bowl game, and we brought everyone back. So this was supposed to be the year where we had a chance at winning the Big 12, and it just hasn't happened. We have 6 losses. 5 of them we have had fourth quarter leads, and so we've been good, just not good enough to pull out the victories.
Well, that's what they say, is that it's the best. What are you, 3-6? Best 3-6 team out there. So, and I believe it's funny because we do a weekly segment where a buddy of mine, we get on and we go through and we break down at the end of our video. We break down all the Big 12 matchups and we do our picks and everything. And I kept picking Kansas. I was like, look, these were fluky losses. They were in these games. They're very impressive. These were better, teams. Like these are excusable losses. They're going to turn around. And I was wrong, and I kept picking Kansas. Finally, you had a couple, really solid wins. Also a great showing against Kansas State, which I know was probably a really hard one to swallow, as it was a rivalry game, but it was you're hanging in there with, a top 25 team and barely lost. And so, yeah, this is definitely, and we know that Kansas is talented. We saw what they did last year, and a lot of those core key pieces are back. BYU knows firsthand. We experienced it. So, tell us a little bit about. Well, first of all, we were talking about coaching. Like, what should we expect from a Leipold team, and what is happening that we're not like with this team that was different from last year? That maybe that they're coming up short in some of these games, or is it just one of those things where it's just kind of fluky?
I think it's very fluky. But I also think there's been late game. I mean, it's late game execution where these were the type of games we won last year, and we just haven't won. They showed a stat last game that this was before we had won, but of all the 2-win teams in the country, our plus minus was plus 45, and the next closest team was minus 60. So, I mean, obviously a team that's 2-6, you'd expect a minus 60 plus minus from them. But Kansas, the 2 games we had won were blowouts, and then all the 6 we lost were very close games. So
Sure.
I think it's mostly fluky. It's execution down the stretch that's really hurt us, because we've played good in all the games and had really good moments, but it's just been fourth quarter flameouts.
Yeah. So what's been, led to what you've won, like 2 of 3? Is that what it is?
Yeah.
And so what has led to things kind of turning around? Is that just regression to the mean, or have you seen difference in perhaps game plan or execution, or is it just matchups, or what was it?
Yeah, I mean, our quarterback is Jalen Daniels, and he didn't play last year. He got hurt early last year.
Oh, he played against BYU.
We had our backup quarterback for most of last year, but he I think he struggled at the beginning of the year. Like I said, late game execution, but he's been on fire these past 3 or 4 games. Really solid, not making mistakes. The first few games, that's the reason that we lost those, was a few of his mistakes toward the end of the games. And so when he's on, I think we're pretty tough to beat.
Yeah. So you guys have um, let's break it down a little bit and go, by different phases of the ball. We've got offense now. This is Jeff Grimes' first year with Kansas. Obviously, somebody who BYU knows really well. He really helped turn around the offense after struggling in the first couple of years in the Satake era. Jeff Grimes came in. He has his own style he really likes. He is an offensive line guy. He really likes to establish the run. You guys have Devin Neal, who is arguably one of the best backs, if not the best running back in the Big 12. And there's, I think, several very good backs in the conference. So tell us a little bit about the offense and how maybe it's different from last year and how they struggled, or maybe and what to expect from them.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the phase of the game that is kind of strength on strength, right? Where, I was looking at some stats and, according to, there's lots of stats you can go, but expected points added, KU has the 24th best offense and BYU has the 15th best defense. And that's in all of, not just the conference, but in all of college. And so I think that's where you really have strength on strength. We struggle at defense, but what Kansas likes to do is they like a lot of pre-snap motion. If you watch, I watch a lot of NFL. I think they're similar to the Dolphins, where they have people moving around on every snap. You have pre-snap, they're reading what the defense is doing by having people go in motion, and they do really good at reading that, and then they do a lot of option plays. So whether that's run pass option or just the traditional option, and Jalen Daniels is just really good at reading what the defense does and either keeping the ball or giving it to Neal, who has just been fantastic this year. Last week he set the all-time Kansas record for most yards, most touchdowns. So yeah, he's a really good back. But I think the run game is really the strength of Kansas, and when we have the run game going, that's when it opens up the pass game, and we have some pretty good receivers.
Yeah, anytime you set a record for a school that's been around since the 1800s, I don't know exactly when the football was established, but that's quite a long time. That you're doing something right. Yeah, and that terrifies me, I have to say. Looking ahead, we got through to the bye week, and looking at the final 4 games, this final stretch for BYU and their schedule, and if Utah hadn't been a rival, this would have absolutely been the scariest game left on our schedule. And we've got a very good ASU team. We've got Houston that's kind of turning it on late, but this is the game that scared me the most because of that threat. And I mean, BYU seems like every quarterback we play has their best running game against us. Even non-mobile quarterbacks tend to have at least one run where they go for a first down. And so that aspect of it is where you have a really good running back that you have to focus on, as well as a mobile quarterback. Now we've done okay, I think, when we've had spies. We have some speed there, linebackers or whoever can kind of track them and help with that. But that's definitely deadly. Just curious, what I know for a while there, fans were really kind of calling for Jeff Grimes' head, figuratively speaking, I think. But has that cooled a little bit, or people kind of turning around on that? And do you think his leash is going to be extended a little, or is he really on a hot seat still?
No, I think it'll be extended. I mean, like I said, these games have been so close. I think if we were blown out, I think if we weren't competitive, that's a different story. But there's a feeling, and you can even see it amongst the players. I mean, in the Iowa State game, they're still very connected. They haven't given up on the season, and so no, I don't feel. You'll always hear those type of things, but I don't think it's a big threat. No.
All right, what's the passing game like?
Kind of like what I was saying. I think the run game opens up the passing game. It's not like a traditional passing game where Jalen will just sit in the pocket and and just kind of throw it all over the field. He does a lot of scrambling and keeps his eyes downfield, and that's when he'll pass it. It's fake. They'll do play action pass, but a lot of it's option where he'll see if there's a run open. If there's not a run open and they're stopping it, then they'll pass it. And I think
Mhm.
that's really a creative way to do it because you're keeping both options open. And so I wouldn't say the passing game's electric by any means, but it can be if the opposing team is putting all their resources toward stopping the run, then that passing game really does open up. And we have some pretty good receivers. Quentin Skinner, Luke Grimm, they're really good receivers that can make some difficult catches. So.
Okay. All right. Well, you're making me feel really good. How about, how about on the defensive side?
Hey, I'm a KU hype person, man. I'm not going to say any. Well, if you go to the defense, maybe I will start saying some bad things.
Okay, good. Make me feel a little bit better. I mean, the good news is what you're saying. Your strength, the offense going up against our strength, the defense, and so
Yeah.
that's really interesting. So, but on the defensive side, how do things look, and what can we expect there? What's kind of the scheme? What's the makeup of the defense?
Well, I'll tell you some positives for Kansas before I tear them down. So we do have the two highest interception guys in the Big 12. So Kobe Bryant and Melo Dotson each have 4 interceptions, and that's the highest out of anyone in the Big 12. But it's a high risk, high reward type defense. They take a lot of gambles. It's actually very frustrating to watch as a fan because I'd rather them just play good, sound defense rather than trying to create turnovers all the time.
Mm.
When it works, it's great, but it doesn't always work, and that's where we really get in trouble. We do have a high sack man, Jerome Robinson. He's 4th in the Big 12 in sacks. So that's been fun, but again, it's high risk, high reward. We're not very disciplined in staying in our lanes where we're supposed to be, and so the defense has been what has just killed us, and it's what it's allowed all these teams to get back in the game when we've had fourth quarter leads. That's why no lead is safe for us because you can just run on us, you can throw on us. So
Yeah, because what I was noticing is the games that Kansas has won, you've scored in the 40s.
yeah.
And then all the games you've lost. I mean, you've had some still high scoring games still in the 30s, but no other games gotten to 40. So it really seems like if it becomes a shootout, Kansas has a really good chance of winning that game.
Oh yeah. If Kansas doesn't score over 30 points, we're going to lose. I mean, it's not going to be a defensive game. So, if BYU holds Kansas to under 30, I think they'll win. So, yeah, we definitely bank on scoring and not playing defense.
How are you guys at defending? Or I mean, you talked about turnovers, interceptions. How are you guys at defending the run? Because that's something that BYU's kind of started picking up on as we've gotten healthy here later in the season.
So when I was looking it up, so our defensive rush, we're 66th, and defending the pass, we're 61st.
Mm-hmm.
So we're equally bad at both of them. So, it's like I said, it's just high risk, high reward, and that's kind of how we've been. Last year, that worked out a lot because we got even more. We're a high interception team, and even this year, again, we're a high interception team, taking a lot of gambles, and so it'll be interesting to see how Retzloff does against that.
Yeah, absolutely. Because he has been turnover prone, although I think for the most part, not that he's been interception free, but for the most part, he's kind of eliminated that from his game. Now he's had some that were, you could say were, one was at kind of a Hail Mary-ish at the end of the half, or, there've been a couple that have been maybe a little bit within the context, weren't as
terrible.
Yeah, or some that aren't necessarily his fault, but they still count. That's all quarterback. So, but I do think he's gotten a lot better in that regard. Some people might still see him as kind of this turnover prone guy, and he's. I mean, that element's a little bit there because he does play kind of. I don't know. He's just kind of a gamer. He's just always trying to make a play, and when you do that, you can maybe leave yourself susceptible to some of those. But my bigger concern than his interceptions is fumbles and turnovers in that way. But it will be interesting. And it'll be interesting to see too with the similarities in the offenses. Obviously, Jeff Grimes helped install the offense that we still run now, with A-Rod having coached under Grimes, still has that system now. It's probably adapted sometime since then, and I'm sure Grimes has some different wrinkles and things that he's put in. But it will be interesting to see how the defenses respond to that, having such I guess proximity, and history between them. So that should be interesting to say the least, to see that chess match play out. I'm really nervous for this one. This is a big one. Now BYU can still afford to drop a game and still make it to the conference championship. And they're coming down off of, you could argue maybe there's going to be a letdown after a huge week against Utah, and then a lot of distraction after that game. That's, that I am worried about where they are. Although you could say that Kansas could, just came off a big game too. Not as big as the Holy War, but coming off of beating a ranked team and having a big win there. I don't know. What would you think Kansas's mindset is coming into this, as they are basically do or die, as they have to win their final 3 games to stay bowl eligible?
That's just what I was going to say. I think that is their goal, and but they have some, their last few games are tough. But yeah, I think that's their motivation. They came out just firing against Iowa State, very prepared. Looked like, a midseason game with a team that had a lot to play for, which, at 2-6, you never know what's going to happen. So I think Kansas is going to give their best game. I think they'll be motivated. But, I think if BYU doesn't turn the ball over, I think that they probably have the advantage.
Yeah, it's crazy. Oh,
another one of I was just going to tell you, one of the things that Kansas is really, really good. Two other things that they're really good at, and it's on offense, because that's what we're good at. Third down conversion rate. We're one of the best in college football, and BYU struggles with that, stopping teams on third down. The other thing is red zone. We've been in the red zone 31 times and scored 25 touchdowns. So not only do we get into the red zone, we score touchdowns when we get into the red zone. And I think it's because of that dynamic running game that we have. And so I think BYU needs to focus on keeping us out of the red zone, because once we get there, we usually score touchdowns.
So. All right. Well, that's excellent. And you're right about the third down. We can have like great first and second, maybe even they're behind the sticks, and somehow on third down they find a way. And that there's nothing more deflating than watching that happen. Having said that, BYU's defense has still been good. It's been so much better, and actually helped BYU win games this year. But
that's what's been so great. I mean, I've watched every BYU game this year, and it's just been so fun. I mean, they've been so fun this year, and it's a magical year. So, I mean, I'm going to the game. I'm wearing all my Jayhawks stuff, but I am going to wear a BYU hat because there's a little BYU in me, and a part of me does want BYU to win, which is hard for me to say because they have so much on the line. My brother and I are already planning a trip to Dallas to watch them in the Big 12 championship game if they make it. And they win the Big 12, they'll go to one of the big bowl games, maybe the Rose Bowl or the what's the one in Arizona?
Dude, we'll have to meet up because we're talking about going to Dallas as well.
Yeah, you going?
I haven't wanted to buy tickets before this game because I feel like we're jinxing it. But if BYU wins this weekend and games, some other games line up, BYU's ticket could be punched this weekend. I mean, you need a lot of things you still need the right teams to lose. I imagine it won't be completely locked up this weekend, but yeah, I mean, that's what we're looking at. I haven't said anything because I don't want to jinx it, but since you brought it up, but yeah, we'll definitely have to meet up while there. So because it's just one of those seasons where it seems like BYU can't be denied. They keep finding a way.
Yeah.
And now I'd love for another Big 12 team to make it be bowl eligible. So I hate to, be the one that ends up eliminating Kansas, but look, this is just one of those seasons that it really is just a magical season that, this is like once in a lifetime almost type of a season that they're having. I mean, you think back to the national championship that happened the year before I was born.
Yeah.
And, they had other, some good seasons, throughout the 80s, late 90s and things. But this one, just with the way the playoff is, this has some, more at stake than really ever before. So, it's a big one. And Kansas scared me before the season. Now, Satake has been really good at revenge games. And that is something been a mark of this BYU team since Satake's taken over. But we were talking about it this week, and I was like, I don't know if he's ever had 2 revenge games in one season, and we already played Oklahoma State and gotten revenge there. So I was like, did we use up our revenge game already? I don't know. And we needed some, last minute heroics from the offense too to win that game.
That was such a fun game. Yeah.
We might have been using using that revenge card already, so we might need something a little bit more against Kansas. So the one thing I have to say that I've seen from this team is they seemed, for the most part, you've seen cracks in some games, but more focused from game in and game out, and I think they're really buying into that and taking it one game at a time. That helps me think that, okay, they're going to come in and take this game really serious, not look past Kansas and get caught up in like the Utah. They've hopefully push Utah behind them and really just focus all in on Kansas. But yeah, man, Kansas, what a brutal end of the season. You got the 4 ranked Big 12 teams, well, teams that have been ranked for a lot of the season. I think ISU's out now, and then with Baylor, who's really turned it on late. It's quite a way to end the season. But anyway, what about special teams? Anything of note there?
No, not really. Just your normal. Nothing too exciting. We'll put Skinner back there sometimes to run back kicks or kneel every once in a while, but they haven't really broken out.
Okay. All right. Well, great. So now it comes to the time, and do you have a score prediction for the game? What do you expect to see?
Is this what I want to see or what I think will happen?
I guess either or both if you'd like. But yeah, I was going for what.
Listen, I'm a KU fan, so I have to go with my Jayhawks.
That's fine.
I think we're going to win 35-34 in a shootout.
Wow. Okay. That's good. I think I said earlier this week, and I was kind of on the spot, I do also think it's going to be a high flying game. I said, I think I said 38-35, something like that. So I think it's going to be a big time scoring game. And yeah, BYU is going to have to be able to outscore Kansas and slow them down just enough to win this one. Because I think Kansas will put up points. So, okay. Well, if nothing else, it should be a good one while we stay up late and watch football and are way too tired and the next morning. But
I'll be there with my 2 boys, my brother who's a diehard BYU fan. He's already said he won't stand by me or he won't sit by me during the game. So he's going to be on the other end, and we'll have our 4 boys in between us. so that he can't hear me cheer whenever Kansas does something good. So,
What
and
will
my dad will be there as well.
He'll be the peacemaker. He can get between you guys.
Yeah, he'll be in the middle in case my brother and I start fighting.
What?
Like I said, I'm not going to be sad if BYU wins because it's such a magical season.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to cheer every play. I'm going to be happy no matter what.
Those are hard. So I don't know if people watching the show how much they've seen. I talked about. So I grew up in Michigan. My fandom. I grew up. Well, my family had ties with the Jazz, and so I was a Jazz. Family coming from Utah, and my brother was big time Jazz. But I was younger when we moved to Michigan, so I was a little bit more Pistons. We did both. In fact, I've got poster up on the wall here, signed by Pistons, and we've been to some Jazz Pistons games, and those were really hard because both teams were good at the same time during that era that we were at some of those games, and it was hard because I wanted to see both teams do well. Now, if one team was down and playing for lottery, and one team was doing well, it's easy. It's like but so I was wearing my Piston stuff just to mostly mess with you guys, all decked out in your Jazz gear, but really I was torn inside because I was like, both teams need the win.
And then we got on the Jumbotron. Do you remember that? You with your Pistons, you were all sad, and us with our Jazz, we were cheering. I still remember that. That was great.
Yeah. They turned off me as soon as I saw it and started cheering or whatever.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, that was fun. But yeah, I mean, the Pistons had a terrible record against the Jazz for many, many years. I don't know. I don't think that's still going on. Well, both teams are pretty bad now, but Pistons are doing okay this season. But
don't get me started on the Jazz.
Yeah. That's another conversation for another
an hour-long conversation.
Honestly, I haven't had
Danny Ainge out of there.
Oh, okay. Well, there. Hot take. BYU alum, careful.
I know.
So I honestly have not had bandwidth for much outside of BYU. It's been that kind of season. It has taken all of my energy and focus. Everything outside of it is just, is just kind of in the periphery. I have not followed very closely. So, but anyway, yeah, those were good times. So I know how it feels to have the split allegiances there. But it should be a good one. Hopefully you go home half sad. The Jayhawk half is sad, but we will see. Yeah, and with the way traffic goes, even though I'm East Coast 2 hours ahead, you and I might get to bed around the same hour.
Well, we're staying in Provo. I ain't dealing with that traffic.
Okay.
We already got a hotel down there. Otherwise, we wouldn't get home till 3 a.m. So.
Yeah, exactly. Which is about what time I'll probably be going to bed. We usually do a live show after to talk about the game. We get people on chatting, and it's a lot of fun. But so anyway, last week after the Utah win, I hopped on Twitter again after we ended our show, and I was, I just taking it all in. So got to bed at
last week was so fun in the morning.
Oh, it was good. Yeah, actually, I want to know. I meant to ask you this at the top of the show. You're in Utah. What has it been like? Interactions between the BYU Utah fans that perhaps you work with?
Oh man, just nonstop whining. I'm a little further up north, right? I'm all the way up Fort Ogden.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot more Utes fans here than down south. And just you wouldn't believe the level of whining from these Utes fans, man. Just whining. I will say this, they do all agree, everyone I've talked to at least, that their athletic director was way out of line.
Oh, yeah.
I think everyone agrees with that. And I just every time they bring it up, I just say that face mask call that they missed. They called a face mask that led directly to a Utah touchdown in the second quarter. What about those 7 points? If we're going to start whining about the rest, let's talk about that. That turned a 2nd and 20 into a 1st and 10. Anyway. So there's been a lot of fun banter back and forth.
Oh man, to be there. I mean, I can't tell you, like, just hearing from people. So my dad's a Ute, but he's really nice. He doesn't do it, but I've got uncles, I have cousins or their husband, all these people, and they think like over the last like decade plus, they think like I'm in on the joke when they're like sitting there like making fun. I was like, you guys realize this is not like fun for me, and they just keep going, and so it'd be fun to be there to give it back to them. But
Well, and the ultimate revenge, and I'm not a Utah hater. Like I said, I grew up liking the Utes and BYU. But the ultimate revenge for BYU, for Utah joining the Pac-12, for all the stuff that they've been mad about over the years, would be them making the playoff before Utah does.
yes, which is why you need to get your Jayhawks to lose.
Well, see, it's perfect right now because BYU can still lose and make it to the Big 12 championship. They can still lose one game, so they can lose. The ultimate would be lose to Kansas, then win out and win the championship.
But the thing is, so here's where I'm at with it: is yes, they can still get to the conference championship game, but I don't believe even if BYU goes 12-0 and then loses the conference championship, the way the committee has been ranking, I do not have that much confidence that they will then get into the playoff as an at-large.
I think in that scenario they will.
You would think so.
I think because by that time, they could be ranked even higher. Indiana's going to lose to Ohio State. BYU will be ranked 5th, 4th, somewhere in there. And if they lose a close game in the Big 12 championship when they're 12-0, I believe they'll still be in the top 10. So that one I'm not too worried about. If they're 11-1 and they lose in the Big 12 championship, they're not going to make it.
Right.
So they have that wiggle room, but I'm with you. If they win these next 3 games, I think they have it clinched. That's my opinion, but you never know.
Plus their odds, not that I really have not allowed myself to even think beyond getting into the playoff. But just getting a bye that first round just gives you such a big advantage over teams having. Now it would be amazing having, and there's no guarantee as an at-large, but let's say they're an at-large, but they have a home game. It would be amazing having a home game.
Yeah, I was trying to think about that. So they would have, in that case, they'd have to go 12-0, lose in the Big 12 championship, but still be in the top 8.
Yeah.
And I don't know that they'll be in the top 8 if they lose a game, maybe. But that would be really fun to go to a home playoff game.
Losing to Colorado in the conference championship game is not as impressive as losing to NIU. So, or Vanderbilt. So it's not as quality of a loss. No,
yeah, don't get me started with this SEC Big 10 bias, man. It's crazy. It's crazy how much Indiana being ranked ahead of BYU is just the biggest travesty. It doesn't even make sense. It doesn't even make sense.
Well, and it could be that at the end of the day, maybe Indiana is better than BYU, but that's not the point. The point is, what have they done on the field?
Nothing.
They played nobody.
Right.
So
here we have SMU. Here we have Kansas State. I agree. I think I follow all these people who do projections of the college football playoff. Before that came out, everyone had BYU ahead of Indiana. Every one of the experts did. And yet for some reason, that committee in that room decided to put Indiana ahead. I don't know what they're thinking.
What do you mean for some reason? We all know what reason it is. It's that patch right there on their jersey. So,
no, I know. Yeah, I know.
Which is ridiculous. And on any other year, I hate it that they're like pitting BYU and Indiana against each other, because every other year I would root for Indiana. The same thing with Kansas. Like, oh, this basketball school that's always bad at football, they've turned this around. It's miraculous. Like, great for them. I should be rooting for them. Instead, I have to root against them. I feel like I have to root against Boise State, who could potentially like pass BYU if they, and steal one of those 4 buys.
Yeah, because you're right. That's the other scenario is BYU loses one of these next 3 and then wins the Big 12 championship, but Boise gets that 4 seed.
Yeah.
And so BYU, I guess that's probably the other scenario where BYU gets a home game, because maybe in that way we are top 8.
True. Yeah, that's probably more likely.
Ranked conference champion, and so, but yeah, no, you're right. I'm rooting against Boise State, rooting against,
we have to root against the other, like, quote unquote little guys,
Right.
which is, I mean, and that's the whole, we've totally digressed from Kansas. This is a whole nother episode. I don't want to completely veer off, but like, yeah, that's the whole trap that the Big Ten and SEC have put over this playoff, which they've
Yep.
installed because it's what people want. Yeah, more access for more teams, not realizing that the way they've set it up is it's more access for their teams with the excuse, well, if it's a playoff, if you're so good, why don't you win? Yeah, well, when you have 4 bites at the apple and we get one, yeah, it's going to be a lot easier to keep winning those championships. And then it's kind of like now they don't play anybody out of conference, so they can keep saying, oh, we beat each other up because we're all so good. How do we know that you're all so good?
I know. Yeah, I'm with you, man.
So anyway, like I said, we've completely digressed, but I love you trashing on the whiny Utah fans a little bit. We should have led with that. That would have definitely been red meat there for the base. But so,
but yeah, nonstop whining. If that's what you want to hear, come to Utah right now.
I'm done with it. Like Twitter, I'm like, I'm so over this conversation. Let's move on to something else. So I'm really looking forward to this game.
Well, at the end of the day, it was a holding, so get over it. Like you're whining about a call that the ref made that was correct.
Yeah. Well, and that's you. I mean, you always hear that in football. I feel like you hear it a lot in basketball. Is like, oh, but do you call those ticky-tack fouls at the end? He's like, if it's a foul, it's a foul, and as long as it's been called consistently, that game. So I don't know. Anyway, yeah, BYU won. Scoreboard,
prevailed in the end.
Yeah.
We were miserable for 3 hours, but those last 4 seconds were great.
It was the most miserable I've ever been in a win over Utah ever. But
oh, I know. We were all so miserable. We hated each other. We were yelling at our kids. We were yelling at each other. We all hated each other. And then the field goal went through, and we all loved each other. Life's great.
Well, that's the thing about watching it here is I'm all alone. Everyone else is in bed, so I only have the couch to yell at. So,
well, call me up and yell at me.
Will do. I will. That way I don't have to suffer alone. So, all right, dude. Well, thank you so much for hopping on. This was a lot of fun. We really should. We'll have to go to a game together sometime. We can wear the same team, swag at that point, so we can be cheering together. But
yeah, that'll be fun. Well, KU's coming to Provo for basketball this year as well. So in February. So come visit for that game.
I would love nothing more. That would be fantastic. I might have to settle for going to West Virginia to catch BYU this year. Maybe down to UCF. We'll do an Orlando trip maybe, but good deal. Well, thanks, man. Let's do this again sometime. Actually, maybe we'll do this again to preview the Kansas game, the basketball game this year. So, all right. Well, thanks so much for joining. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel and catch all the content that I've been plugging throughout this episode. And as always, go Cougs.
See ya. Rock Chalk.